Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Northshire Presents. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. My name is Rachel Person. I am the event manager for Northshire Bookstore in Saratoga Springs, New York, also representing our flagship store in Manchester Center, Vermont this evening. A couple of quick notes before we get started. First of all, you may have noticed as you came in that we are recording this evening's event for future broadcasts on our YouTube channel. However, fear not, we have the settings arranged so that it is only recording those of us who are unmuted and speaking in this lovely yellow box that you see around me at the moment. So you can have your camera on and you will not be recorded for posterity if you wish to do so. If you wish to have your camera on, you will not be recorded for posterity. In light of that, please use the chat box to ask any questions that you have. You can put questions in there throughout the evening. We'll have time for audience questions at the end of the night, and I will save up your questions and pose them for you then. And then last of all, before I introduce our guest tonight, a word of thanks. Independent bookselling is not an easy business in the best of times, and the last year and a half have not been the best of times. And the fact that both Northshire locations still exist is really thanks to the incredible support and loyalty of our audience and our customers, which means you. We couldn't do events like this one without the support we've seen from all of you. So thank you so much for being here tonight and for your incredible loyalty and support over this last year and a half. Tonight, it is my very great pleasure to get to introduce Meredith Ireland. She is here with us to celebrate the release of her debut young adult novel, The Jasmine Project, which I have right here, yay. I just read this book over the weekend and I found it so sweet and delightful. I know that we'll be reading great books from Meredith for years to come. And she's going to be interviewed tonight by another great friend of Northshire, Jennifer Dugan, the author of young adult books, including Hot Dog Girl, Verona Comics, and most recently, Some Girls Do. I'll be placing links to both of these wonderful books in the chat in just a moment. And meanwhile, please join me in welcoming Meredith Ireland and Jennifer Dugan to Northshire Presents.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I am so excited to celebrate the launch of this amazing book, The Jasmine Project. I first read it in ARC. My hardcover is not here yet. But I first read it a while ago. So I've been sitting with these characters for a while and I'm so excited to finally be able to like gush with the whole world. It's got so much, it's got family, it's got food, it has amazing love interests and this sort of bachelorette style dating. It really just like ticks all the boxes for me. And I can't say enough about how much I love your writing and I love I'm just so, we've been on such a long journey together. I met Meredith, Maryland. I combined and last name. I met Meredith several years ago before either of us had a book out. So it's just really thrilling. She came to my Hot Dog Girl launch. And it's just really exciting to be able to return the favor. So happy release day. Happy book birthday.
Thank you so much.
Now, for those who have not gotten a chance to read it yet, can you fill us in on what your pitch is? What the Jasmine Project is all about?
I can. So the Jasmine Project is kind of my big fat Greek wedding meets The Bachelorette. Jasmine has kind of settled into the safe and secure life, and that includes having dated the same guy who Jen's a huge fan of since freshman year of high school. And when her family, who does not like him because of the way he treats her, finds out that he's been cheating on her, they decide to step in and introduce her to the most eligible bachelors in Orlando in a kind of bachelorette setup. The only thing is that they don't tell her. So hilarity and hijinks ensue.
Okay, so let's start with these love interests. So throughout the book, she's juggling multiple boys being set up with multiple meet cutes that her family's orchestrating. These kind of dates are happening. Her family's behind all of it. How hard was it for you to make sure that each of these boys kind of had their own unique voice and motivation? And did you have a favorite to write? And as you know, if you say Paul, I'm just going to log off right now. Like this. Paul is the boyfriend the family hates, for anyone who hasn't read yet. I also share the family's feelings about him. And so, yes, Rachel will have to step in and finish this if you name him at all in this.
So when I made the 3 boys, what I wanted to do was to make sure that they had different aspects to them and brought out different things in her, because the story at its core, even though it has all this fun and all this romance, is really about self-love and self-discovery and realizing what you're worth. So a lot of it was to serve as a foil to Paul and to the way that she's been treated, and to show her that she's much more comfortable with the boy next door who she's known for years, and she feels much more special with this super cute minor league baseball player. And then, you know, she has this other boy who actually has the dream life that she wants, which is to be a chef, who is kind of pushing her to pursue her dreams. And so a lot of it was to bring out different aspects of her that she'd been kind of repressing and shrinking to still fit into the relationship she was in.
And your favorite of all of them was?
Okay, so I would say, I mean, initially I loved Justin Michael. Like, I'm a sucker for, you know, the old friend who's now, who you knew as a child, who's now back in town, but Eugene's just great. So.
I'm glad that we can remain friends. Did not answer incorrectly, so this works out for me. It's funny how it happens when you're writing a book. Like, you'll go in and you'll think you know everything, and you think, you know, this is my favorite person. I get you know, and then as you're writing, it's just kind of everything changes and your favorites change, and as you develop these side characters, that you realize things that you didn't know about them. Do you have that? Like, did you have that experience a lot as you were developing these boys and their voices and stuff? Or were you like, this is their personality, like going in? Did you have everything? I know you're like a very logical thinker. Did you approach this and your approach to having all of these different love interests? I make love interest, like one love interest in my books, and I still feel like it's a lot. So did that require like a ton of planning, and did you bring all of your logic skills to this?
I mean, you know this, I'm a pantser, so the logic kind of goes out the window. Like, I had to present like a carefully crafted synopsis that like I lit on fire just about the second I started writing. So it was, I like allowing the characters to take you where they want to go. I feel like that's a very organic way, and probably it's your brain working in there some way. But I feel like it's a more organic way. And then if you have to change the synopsis, or you are not presenting the same book that you allegedly sold, well, you know, we have agents and we have people to work that out. So yeah, I liked being able to do that.
So as we've both mentioned, her family plays a pretty big role in not only the setup, but in her whole life. She has a very involved, large family. And I love how you captured all the various dynamics. I particularly loved the sibling dynamics. I thought that you wrote, you know, the older sister, the younger brother, like so well, but I also loved how we got to see that in the older generation between her mother and aunt. Can you tell us a little more about how you developed this family and how they became so central to the plot? Because a lot of times in YA, you see the parents kind of like set aside. They're like mystery parents because these kids are off, like, you know, saving the world or doing whatever they're doing without supervision. So I would love to hear more about how you, like, your motivation behind that.
I feel like, especially when you're a teenager, when you're in high school, your family is so central to your life and to how they shape you, and they are because you're obviously, most people are living at home, and these are the people who are influencing you all the time. And sibling dynamics are super interesting. Like, for example, if your cat tries to murder your brother and you don't say anything, it is just a really fascinating dynamic for when, your cat named Bonkers is trying to kill your brother, Jen.
This is feeling very specific and feeling very called out right now.
It could be anybody's cat named Bonkers trying to murder their brother by dragging them into the murder tub.
Yeah. So that did happen. I do have a cat who is interesting. And he did try to force my brother into the tub in an attempt to not foster a stronger relationship, let's say. And I did not tell my brother for years because I wanted him to continue babysitting for me. And I just said, that's so weird that he chased you into the bathtub. And then it came out, now that my kids are older, I was like, yeah, that's where he used to put like anything he dragged into the house. That was, that's where he put you to like stay until he could come back later. So yeah, I agree. There can be interesting family dynamics, especially when you need free babysitting. So, but also your decision to include not just her siblings, but also, reaching back into the adult generation and to really explore the impact that those kind of, like, can you talk a little more about that and how you kind of showed how the things that are happening among the parents and the aunts and the older generations, how that can really trickle down throughout the whole family? I thought you did that really beautifully.
Oh, thank you. So in order to have a cast that's that large without it being kind of like just this glossary of names, I involved like a lot of interstitials. So there's the family group chats, there's the podcast transcripts, there's her little brother kind of has a bookmaking business going on, taking bets for which bachelor is going to win. And I love that as a storytelling device because I feel like it works very well when you have this big unwieldy cast. And I love that, as you said, when you have an older generation, it always does trickle down into how the younger generation is going to interact with each other. And I like books that explore that. And so when it came time to write Jasmine and her enormous family, I really wanted to highlight that, the way her mother treats her is going to be similar to the way her Nana treats her mother, because that was the way it was growing up for me. Like, if my mother had something to say about what I was wearing, my grandmother had something to say about what my mother was wearing. So it's the same type of thing. Or, something about meatballs, well, then we're all going to talk about this now. So yeah, I just really wanted to make them kind of three-dimensional and come alive with the various interstitials and then her perspective too.
Yeah, I thought that was very effective and very well done. It was one of my favorite things because you don't see that a ton. You don't see that care a ton in young adult novels. So that really, really stood out to me when I was reading it. Now, you kind of dove into this. My next question was really about how, in addition to the first person narration that we're used to, you did use podcast transcripts, text, all this stuff. You talked about some of the advantages, especially when you have a large cast. Were there any particular challenges to taking this kind of multimedia approach?
I think you have to keep it consistent. So you have to keep, like, it's a story going on its own. And so it has to make sense if you're only going to be reading, say, the family group chats. It has to make sense and stay consistent. And it's not super difficult, but it's also not super easy to do when you have a 50-something person family going on. There's a family tree in the back of the book for anybody who's looking. It is the last page. And I think on the ebook, it might be earlier on, but it is on the last page.
Oh my gosh, I just had a great follow-up question and it just flew out of my head. Oh, so when you were writing, did you write the narration first and then go back and add in all of these different things like the text chats and that, like, did they exist on their own, or did you just do it all at once? Like, this is time. Like when I was doing Verona Comics, all of the texts, text feature very heavy in my second book, and those were just moving the same central plot and they were between the two main characters. So I could just switch and say, I'm going to throw in a chapter of just a text here. But yours, like I said, are almost at times happening in parallel. So how did you handle that? Was it all drafted at once, or?
It was all drafted at once. I'm a very linear drafter. I have to go from chapter 1 to the very last chapter. I love people who are like, oh yeah, chapter 38 came to me, and so I wrote that, and I'm like, that would be a mess. Like I would have to like delete it and start over again because it's going to have a totally different voice, style, and tone from wherever I'm getting to from chapter 1. So I'm very, very page by page. So it did kind of just bring out aspects of the story, and sometimes I had to delete them.
Yeah, did you end up having to cut a lot, or like, are there any hope for seeing some behind the scenes outtakes someday?
Ooh, I mean, I do have them in my 87 different drafts somewhere. they do
final actual final, I swear this is the final
doc 2. Yeah. So yeah, they I had this this conversation between Carrie and Eugene that had to get cut, pretty much because it was already giving away things that were going to happen later on, or they were summing up, or it kind of doubled up on what I already had. So then they hit the cutting room floor. But that is a good thought to have kind of these extras maybe on my website.
You should do that. I would love to see them. Or you can just not even put them on the website and just send them straight to my inbox, whatever's easiest. So food was also very present in this book. And I know you even had some recipe cards made up that you're sending out readers. Did you have to do a lot of research and experimenting with these recipes? I felt like they really popped, and your descriptions of the different like foods, and even when she was grocery shopping, they were just so vibrant. Was that a lot of effort? Like, are you a foodie? Do you do a lot of cooking?
I am, and weirdly enough, you've never come over for dinner, so that's very strange. Yeah, I kind of between college and law school, I was working in fine dining, and I wasn't in the kitchen, but I was bartending and serving, and I became kind of a foodie through that, through spending the time in the fine dining kitchens. And also, when I was 12, my mother just like quit cooking. She didn't like it, and so we like ordered out for about a year. And so then I guess we all got tired of that, and somebody had to take over, and it was me. So I really started learning to cook multiple dinners when I was 13. And so by now I'm pretty good at it. So for the book, I actually came up with the recipe that's on the recipe cards, which is like synagogue arancini. So it's garlic fried rice balls, and they are delicious. They are so good. I've made them, like we made them in a test kitchen, and then tweak them out to just be, they're really delicious. Like I would order these in a restaurant. They are really, really good. So the instructions are there, and they do turn out really well, and they are gluten-free because that's how I cook.
So are the different things that we see featured in this book, then, are they all things that you like to cook, or?
Yeah, I think they're all things that I have definitely made before. I was just sort of like pulling things, like when she's grocery shopping and she decides on mussels, like that's something that I've made before, mussels with blue cheese and bacon. I think it's delicious.
Yeah, because to me, I was like, wow, this is not like, I would be like, okay, so I need the frosted flakes. So I was very impressed. I was impressed across the board. And I will be making that recipe on your recipe card because that does sound amazing. And hopefully within my ability, I am not actually my son, who is 15, will probably make them because he is the big foodie in the house.
Oh.
So, and he will probably read your book because this is like right up his alley with all of these like foods.
Oh. Let me know how they turn out. I can tweet from
yeah,
afar.
I'll send you pictures. Or so now, as I mentioned before, when I met you, it was before either of us had a book out, and now here we are years later, and we're celebrating your debut. I just had a book come out in May. So while this is your debut, this was not the first book that you ever wrote. No. So how many books are sitting in your trunk?
Oh
how did we get from A to B?
Oh gosh. So the first book was a awful, I don't even think you know this. It was a Hunger Games knockoff that was set underwater, but they were very much not mermaids. They were like sea people or sea humans. It was, pretty phenomenal as a work of art. Somehow that's
did they like just slowly walk through water? It was like when you see like the water aerobics at the Y.
They're really good swimmers. Like I don't know. It was a whole thing. And they're like in this war with like land humans. It's a whole thing. And then I wrote kind of like a fairy tale. That wasn't done well either. And then one about Saratoga. Not great. Not great. So those three were trunked. Then a Jane Eyre retelling that was better. Like, so I was getting better at this point. And then there was Scattered that I signed with my agent for that. It just never, I think if NA were a thing, we love the NA. If NA came back, rose from the dead and became a thing again, I think it could probably fit in there, but it just never had a real stronghold in adult. But YA was too young for it because they needed this history that like can't take place between the ages of like 14 and 16. Like it has to take place over like a substantial amount of time that they've known each other. So that was trunk 2. So now we're at 5. 6 was actually one that you read and you liked a lot. It was the Domestic Suspense.
Yeah,
so that is the one.
When I met you, you were writing adult thriller kind of things, like Gone Girl, actually.
Yes, and I still love that book, but it was very much like went to acquisitions, but we don't know how to market this, so it didn't wind up selling, and that was tough. And then Jasmine Project. So how many is that? 6 in the trunk?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think that's in the trunk. Yeah, Hot Dog Girl was my 6th book. So I think there's something about that. Either it just weeds out the people who can't write like book after book after book without like getting discouraged, because there was definitely a learning curve on my end. The first book that I wrote and queried, my comps, which were very humble, I comped it to Nick Hornby and James Joyce. Ooh. Which is definitely where you want to land for like an upper YA, those are the leading voices in YA right now, James Joyce. Yeah, so there does tend to be a learning curve. What do you like? So now, and you have another young adult novel coming out. So
I do.
what do you love about like this YA space? You know, because when I met you, you were doing these like Gone Girl domestic suspense. And now YA rom-coms are like just like a little different. So what, you know, how are you liking it? Like, welcome to Kidlit officially, formally.
Thank you. You know, I love YA. I was reading, even when we met, I was reading a lot of YA, and I really enjoy it. I feel like the category in general is making amazing moves and headway into representation, into tackling difficult topics, but in a very accessible way. I feel like they are moving at a faster and more genuine pace toward diversifying and really reflecting the world around us as it is, and not staying in the narrow, like, okay, we're just going to have women who are renovating B&Bs and we're going to, like, that's it. That's all we're going to put out. So I love that aspect of it. And then somewhere along the line, like, I don't know, 3 years ago, people informed me that I was funny, which is interesting because, like, I grew up with the whole, like, that's not funny, Meredith. And my mom was there today. So I kind of heard, I didn't hear that's not funny, Meredith, but I kind of heard like the kind of like, Meredith, from whatever I had said. So, you know, it really fits, and it's a late fit, which I love.
So what has been, well, I was going to ask what has been the most surprising part of your publishing journey, but maybe that, you know, how we ended up here. What has been the best part so far?
All right, so the cheesiest possible way of saying this would be the friends we made along the way. But it, you know, the community aspect of Kidlit, of YA, has its downsides, as we've all seen play out time and time again, but it also has a lot of upside. Like, writing is a super solitary action, and, you know, it's just you and your keyboard and screaming into a pillowcase, and like, that's it. Like, that's it until it goes in any shape to a reader. And so I feel like the YA community makes it feel less alone, and it makes it feel like there are other people who at the very least can commiserate with where you're at. And not only that, but then when you make friends in the community, you get amazing critique partners, beta readers, people who will blurb your book, which is very important as things roll on. And even just to have somebody who you're like, maybe say like a week ago, you're sitting in the pit of despair, and they're like, that's nice, but you still need to tweet from your pit of despair because you have a book coming out. It's really important, and it's such a great find from the community and from doing this.
I actually agree. That's always been my go-to. I think that is the best part, is just the people, especially the readers, the teens. It's just, we're very lucky that we get to do this. Like, we work very hard, but when you sit back and think about it, it's like, man, this actually is like a really cool job.
It is.
So speaking of writing and your peers, what advice would you give to writers who want to be where you are?
I would say to take a slightly shorter road, maybe like trunk like 3 manuscripts, maybe work a little harder on them. It's always reading. It comes down to reading for craft and reading for pleasure. And so long as you are reading something, you are probably working on both. Reading things that have come out within the last, say, 2 years, you know, frequenting your local indie and seeing what's new, really up your game, and they up where you're at, and they let you know where the market's at, they let you know where the genre's at, and it's so important. And I would say the biggest difference for me writing about sea people who are very strong swimmers to me having the Jasmine Project out is that I read it within YA, that I wanted to see where it's at now. And to just continually improve and look at character motivations. And reading some girls do books like that are phenomenal at character motivation, at just funny romance, and then trying to figure out in your head, how was this working? What about this made this tick? What about this so resonated with me and made these characters so three-dimensional, is super important.
Yeah, I think it really does. Like, the more that you read, I think the more that you know, and sometimes I try so hard to turn it off, and it's like, just go with it, don't like analyze it. But then like there'll be like a twist or some sort of a reveal, or just like a really beautiful sentence, and I like waver between like, how did they set this up, and like, oh my God, I need to die now that I didn't write that sentence. That is the most perfect sentence that I have ever read, and we should all just pack up and go home. Yeah, so I definitely am with you. What are you, with that being said, what are some of your favorite books from the last like year or so?
Okay, so let's talk about Some Girls Do, because
that was not a planned setup, by the way.
But it worked really well. So let's roll with this. Let's be like, yeah, we rehearsed this, we practiced this, and this is gold.
Oh man, I gave it up. Like, we're actually very awkward. No, we were smooth. That was like, I set it up and you like hit it over the, I don't
knocked it down. Look at us go, like pros. No, I absolutely loved it, because I read Hot Dog Girl, and then I read Verona Comics, and I love them. But, the growth that I saw in Some Girls Do, the way that you shaped these characters was amazing. So was it always laid out in the way that I read it? Or like, what were like the major changes, the obstacles? Like, what did you tell me about it?
No, yeah, I wasn't super expecting to talk about it a lot. So I need to just like get in my head, because I just turned in. That's the other fun thing about this industry, is that like by the time you're promoting a new release, you're like 3 books past it.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned in another book last night, Melt With You, which will come out next year.
Ooh.
And so now my head is full of this like ice cream truck rom-com, and I need to like pull it back in. So yeah, I mean, Morgan and Ruby, I knew that was like their basic story was what I always wanted to tell. I didn't know that Ruby at first was going to be a beauty queen. I knew I wanted her to do something, and it was actually, I don't know if you remember this, because this was years and years and years ago, but we got coffee together in Saratoga with Karen McManus.
Oh yeah.
One of us is lying and all that. And we were all just sort of like talking about what we had coming up. And she was actually the first one to mention like, well, what if she was like a beauty queen? Or she said something along those lines that made me turn around and be like, wait a minute, what, a beauty queen? Like, cause I can't remember exactly what she said, but the idea of her becoming a beauty queen was born out of that conversation, where I was just like, I know she's like a mechanic and she loves doing something, but I want her to like really embrace her femininity. Yeah. And so it just comes like all inspiration. It just comes from whatever you're doing, and then it just slaps you in the face. And then of course I had Hot Dog Girl and Verona Comics already under contract at that point. So I had to just kind of sit, which I think was to the benefit of Morgan and Ruby and Some Girls Do, because I just got to sit with them for a couple of years while I worked on other stuff. So by the time it came to actually sit down and draft this book, I felt like I knew, like they had been my roommates for so long. I knew like what color the lint was in their pocket. I'm like, all right, can you get out? Because this is like, you're taking up too much real estate in here. I've got other books to do. It was almost like a relief to just kind of throw it out there.
It really showed that you knew them down to their core, because as a reader, you got to feel like you did. I loved how it was the story of, not to give anything away, but just a quick, it was the story of this one girl who is sort of through scandal kind of out and proud, and the other one is more at the beginning of her journey, right? More kind of figuring out who she is and who she loves, and isn't ready to be out and proud the way the other girl is. So was that a really important story for you to tell? Like, how did you feel about that? Like, how did you feel like it would be received?
Yeah, I really wanted to, I mean, I think there's like a lot of, there's a lot of conversations around coming out, and there's a lot of conversations about coming out books. But I actually don't think we've seen a lot of different kind of coming out stories. No. The coming out stories that we see are usually, affluent, well-adjusted, and it turns into this like comedy, or it goes the other way where it's this like very dark, heart-wrenching.
Right.
And so I really wanted to show both sides, and that there's all different ways of kind of coming out, and all different ways of being out, where it's not necessarily like Morgan coming to terms with her, how she wants to live her life looks very different from Ruby, who has had, a completely different upbringing without a supportive family, and how it doesn't always have to be this like loud and proud thing, as Morgan is learning that throughout the book. You can be out and proud of yourself in quiet ways, and it's like just as meaningful. And that's really what I wanted to have, because kids can't always be Morgan. Kids can't always come out and yell and put an angry lesbian pin on their shirt. So they don't have the parents that will allow them to do that. And at the age group that I'm writing for, they're typically very dependent on their parents' approval and support. And, so that has to be more of a factor than we see a lot in YA. It's usually about the kid's journey, and not so much how their home life necessarily fits into that. Because the reality is that, some of your parents are going to be big Trump supporters, and you're going to have to live with that,
Right. No.
So yeah, that was my big motivation to do a coming out story and show it kind of in both acts. And I think if I hadn't done it with both of them having point of views, it would be really easy to paint the other one as a villain. So I really wanted to show that like there really isn't a right or wrong. They're both a mess. Now I did mention that yesterday I turned in my ice cream truck Bronco.
Okay.
And so this is my final question for you is, what are you working on? What's coming our way once we devour this book and we're starving for more? Where do we go from here?
So publishing. So I have a completely secret project that I cannot talk about that's out in May.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other details. That's it. And then in next fall, there will be kind of my venture into I do consider it the queer space, because I think demisexuality definitely falls into the, I feel like it falls into the queer space because it's what I am. And then I feel like it's also very misunderstood, and it's also late to be understood. So Everyone Hates Kelsey Miller will be out next year, and it is two rivals at their entirely too competitive high school, which is something that I went to, who team up to win back their exes on an overnight road trip to the University of Pennsylvania. And so it's enemies to lovers, it's a road trip, it's the short timeline, and he has been ghosted by his summer girlfriend, and she has been kind of broken up with by her best friend who will not talk to her. And so it's a matter of her figuring out why and him figuring out why, and them kind of teaming up to do this together in a way in which they share just like one common sense brain cell between them, because the people who I went to school with were like that. I was like that. So extremely smart kids doing extremely questionable things is the next book.
I love that. Next year we will both have a enemies to romance road trip novel out. Mine just takes place in an ice cream truck, but they are traveling like the entire East Coast. So,
oh, I love that. I actually did not know what you were working. Like you've said melted, and like then there are like all these acronyms for these other books, and I'm like, yeah, I know what she's talking about, but like I didn't. So because like, you had one that like had started in a yogurt shop that you'd sent me like pages for, but
this isn't that. No.
Okay.
No, this is a whole other, this one is coming out in 2022, May 17th of 2022. It's called Melt With You Now, which is really funny because they said melted, my team said melted sounds like a Frozen parody, which I was like, okay, whatever. And then As If on Cue by Marissa Cantor, I think it comes out in the next couple of weeks. But her book, I loved it. I blurbed it. It's one of the best reads. And it starts with a Frozen spoof that they're making, a Frozen spoof musical in their high school, and it's called Melted. And when she sent me the book blurb, I got through like the first 5 pages and I was like, what in the world?
Because I would never have put that together. I would have never been like, oh, this is going to be like a Frozen parody.
I know. And we're at totally different pubs, so it's not like our teams talked. I immediately sent it to everyone and I was like, you were right. I was wrong. It apparently is a great name for a Frozen spoof. So yeah, that was, I love when the universe kind of comes full circle like that.
And then
so we have, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. But you have other things coming up, don't you? Like graphic novels?
I do. Coven is supposed to come out next August, which is my Queer Witches in upstate New York. For that though, it really does depend on the artist, and with the print delays, I don't know. I'm low-key wondering if I'm gonna get an email that's like, sorry, it's coming out in 2023 because we can't print it in time. But if everything goes to plan, it should be out in August. So I would have a May and August this year, because if not, I'm going to have 2 August releases in 2023, and I don't really know how that's going to work. Be ready, Rachel.
We'll just be camping out at Northshire, like both of us with May, and then both of us with like August, September-ish. I don't know. I don't know when they're putting it out.
It'll be fine. We have some great audience questions coming in. The first one, and a lot of great love from the audience also for both of you and your work coming in. And the first question is from May Lynn, asking Meredith if you're comfortable answering. I'd love to know how your identity as an adoptee impacted your writing of the Jasmine Project.
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Yes, it did. So first and foremost, when I went to write this novel, I wanted it to be an adoptee, and I wanted it to be an adoptee who's doing something other than searching for birth parents, because although I think this is an entirely valid story, I feel like we do other things and they're often not portrayed, and very often what is portrayed can be offensive. Because it portrays us as less, like that we are not whole without knowing our birth parents, and that's what's driving the search. And so I really wanted this entirely happy family where the siblings are just the siblings and the parents are just the parents, and everybody is going to screw up accordingly, but it informs who she is, but without being about being adopted.
That was one of the things that I really appreciated reading the book, was how much, it's really, yes, it's a rom-com, it's sweet, it's funny, but it's really a family story. And it's really just this lovely, sprawling hilarious, ridiculous family, and that her being an adoptee is just like one of the things about her. Was I really appreciated that and loved it as I was reading. Another question that we got came from Katie, and it's for both of you. To what degree do you draw from real locations when writing?
Oh, I can take this one first. So Winter Park was where I went to college. And so it was the first place, unlike Jasmine, I really didn't, my family is not like the Jasmine Project. They are not always entirely supportive and loving. And so when I went to college, where I went to college became my first place that really felt like home. And when I went to write the Jasmine Project, I really wanted to set it there. And because Orlando is more than Disney. And I really I felt like I grew a lot as a person, and I wanted to show somebody growing a lot as a person there.
Hot Dog Girl takes place at the Great Escape. So if you read it and you have been to the Great Escape in the like 90s, it's a little different now. That Six Flags owns it, but you know, if you are around my age and you went to the Great Escape ever, you know this exact layout where the carousel, and you know, she rides the gondola which goes over the diving pirates, around the carousel, you go back down, there's Cinderella dancing. Yeah, I didn't even really try. I just wanted to really set a book there. And the whole idea for the book came while I was writing the gondola at Great Escape. So I'm like,
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm like, here we go. Like, I'm just going to do it. And then I realized that like people are going to be reading it for all, you know, it like, I started getting questions like from my agent at the time and my editor, and they were like, can you like flesh this park out a little bit more, because I don't really know like what's going on. And I'm like, sure, I think I still have the map from my childhood. There's the raging river, I mean, you know, the lazy river, like, so yeah, I definitely in that case, although I don't know if I should have admit that, right? Because then you have that whole like disclaimer in the front of books that like
entirely fictional park. Yeah. It's an entirely fictional park.
Right. It was based on a loose interpretation. But yeah, I mean, so I definitely did for Hot Dog Girl. Rona Comics, you know, was just kind of a mashup of, I do a lot of Comic-Cons because I come from an indie comic space. So it is just kind of like a mashup of things. But I think we always kind of borrow from the real world, you know, for sure.
So another question from Katie, she asks, do either of you have any concepts or tropes that you would love to write in the future? I guess ones that you haven't done yet.
So I believe, so I owe an option book. So that'll be YA number 3. And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do Secret Royalty. I just think it's fun, and I don't know that you ever grow out of kind of wanting to be a princess, like for whatever that means to you, like whether it just means I don't really need to do anything and I'm going to be super wealthy, or you know, whatever it is, or you have that power or the prestige or whatever it is. I don't know that you ever grow out of it. And so I want to do that, and I think I'm going to set it at a summer sleepaway camp, because I went to one and they have a way of just suckering in foreign teenagers who like think they're coming to like New York, and they stick them in the middle of like Lowellville, New York. Nothing wrong with Lowellville, but like they stick them in the middle of nowhere in New York, and they're kind of like stuck for however long their servitude lasts for. I think it's usually like 8 weeks. So I love like the kind of closed campus feel and Secret Royalty. So that's what I'm working on.
In Melt With You, I put pretty much every trope I could possibly fit. So next year you'll see them all. I did, you know, enemies. I actually managed with this same couple. best friends to lovers to enemies to friends to where do we and those are just two people in one trope. Like I got all of that in. Second chance romance, forced proximity, because I shoved.
Is there one bed?
There is only one bed. Yeah. So really any trope that you can really think of, I think, except for like secret baby, because they're two queer girls. So that would have to be a little more deliberate. Yeah, I think that's the only, but I think I hit pretty much, and secret royalty, I guess, isn't in there, to be fair. Although you never know, maybe there'll be a sequel where grandma appears. But yeah, so that is, Melt With You is like my love letter to like tropey romance.
Those both sound so much fun. I cannot wait to read all of your tropey goodness from both of you. So we are sadly just about out of time, and I had some very serious questions that I could ask, but I'm actually going to close this out, I think, with just a fun question, because it's good to end on a fun note. Would either of you like to spitball dream casting? If you were making a movie of your books, is there anyone you are just dying to cast as one of your characters?
I loved, and I don't know the actresses. All right, so I will confess, I really don't know any actor or actresses' names. Like, this is not like my strong suit. So I'm gonna like say the one that they were in and be like that one. So the actress who played Lara Jean, I thought did such a phenomenal job, and I would love to see her play Jasmine. Although by the time that rolls around, these are teens, so they're probably too old at that point to play them. It was very important to me to have an Asian love interest, a male Asian love interest. And so there are any number of attractive, they're not teens, they're, adults that play teens that can play it. Jen, can you do this better than I can?
No, while you were talking, I actually just looked up the name of the actress because I completely, like, it all went out of my head. I actually used to have really good answers to this. I actually didn't fan cast, some girls do. So I don't, like, I'm just getting excited for like the actors that I really love that are in their like late 20s. Like, I can't wait for like 3 more years when I can like cast them all as the dads. Like, I would love to get like Dylan O'Brien being a dad, and like all these, I'm like, can you just hurry up and like age just a little? Because once you hit like 30, Hollywood's gonna make you a dad. And then I always try to write like sweet or cute parents for like the parents who are reading these YA with their kids, so that they can also have a crush. So any parents that like to read my YA, I am hoping to someday cast you very attractive parents. But I do have one ultimate dream cast. If I could have anyone in the world play Lou from Hot Dog Girl, it would be Sophia Lillis, who she was in It. She's been in like 100 things. I could just click this picture and tell you. But when I saw It, everyone else was like screaming because the clown is like eating people. And I was completely distracted because I was like, this is Eloise. I'm like grabbing everybody's hands. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is Lou from Hot Dog Girl. And they're like, she's fighting a demon clown. And I'm like, it literally does not matter. I don't care. Like, she belongs in a hot dog suit. So yes, that would be my ultimate, like, if I could say. And now I just want to like put her in like a time capsule so that she's like ready if that ever happens.
I'm sorry for putting you guys on the spot. That was a harder question than I thought it would be, but still a nice note to end on. Jen and Meredith, it's been so much fun listening to the two of you talk tonight, and really, Meredith, an honor to get to celebrate this occasion with you. It's really special to get to be there as part of your debut, and I appreciate you celebrating with us tonight.
Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful, and thank you so much for having me at the store and everything you did. I really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. It's always a blast doing events with you.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you, audience. You can find books by both of these wonderful authors on our website, northshire.com, and learn more about other great events that we have coming up. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.